Hello, on Scatter replaying the demo 49 keys. It was the year of our Lord 1520. A most unusual figure arrived by dusk at the gates of the Dominican convent in Sant Agostino, Padua. His modest carriage was pulled by a black mule. Presenting himself as the convent's gates, he would speak but one word, my name. His striking uncommon features suggest he hailed from a distant realm, a mysterious eastern land perhaps. To me, he handed a letter scribed upon parchment before climbing back in his carriage without a word. Then he left and never returned. Upon returning to my chamber, I unfurled the parchment, raising it to the window, lit through which faint rays of setting sun shone. With a sudden surge of emotion, I discovered the missive was penned by none other than Master, aged yet never to be forgotten. When I had not long donned the cassock, I dwelt within the convent of San Domenico, Bologna. In those days, it was he who stood as my prior. In that sacred abode, he had introduced me to the Holy Scriptures and the studies. To the church doctors and their eminent theologians. However, his thirst for knowledge was so great that it could never be stated by these few pursuits, noble thoughts they were. Thus, taking aside a number of us monks who shared his thirst for learning, he began introducing us to various other disciplines, with great delight, I may add. Astronomy was a particular passion of his, the charting of the stars, the positions and motions, and astrology, which studies their influence upon worldly affairs. We, his disciples, were truly gripped by his lessons. Even today, though many years may have passed, I cherish them so. They live on in my mind, vivid and untouched memories. An immense sorrow engulfed me as I pursued this letter. Master informed me that his time on earth was drawing to a close, so he was preparing to undertake the long journey toward God. Hence he had decided to leave me with an invaluable work, a form of inheritance. A work that only I could safeguard in his stead. He explained little of his work, yet this, along with the urgency with which I was summoned to his residence, only served to further fuel my already keen curiosity. I dearly hoped to reach him before his departure from his life, so departed promptly upon dawn. I informed the prior, a man with whom I was quite close, and joined a group of timber merchants heading westward the following day. After several days on the road, I purchased an old sickly mule for a few coins. I then left the merchant caravan to head northwards towards the mountains and lakes past the Duchy Milan. One of those lakes was to be the final stop upon my journey. Master had written of reaching a small town upon the river Olona, the name of which now escapes me. There, near the collegiate church, I was to find an abbot who would then lead me to his hermitage by the lake's shore. A holy man there gave me the terrible news that the master had passed on several weeks earlier. He himself had witnessed the body as it was ferried across the lake for funeral rites and fitting burial. His words plunged me into the deepest despair. My companion noticed my dejection and tried to comfort me with great compassion. I then asked the holy man if he had been given anything to hand to me. He merely explained with a shake of head that a particular-looking stranger had only brought him a message with instructions to receive me at the collegiate church. The monastery where he served as an abbot belonged to master's family, and there he had lived in solitude. Only a few servants kept him company in a palace out upon one of the lake's islands. The servants had left the palace over the past few days. Hence I would receive no welcome. However, he explained its gates would be left open to allow me access to the interior. I spent the night in the cell of a monastery, perched high atop rocky cliffs, mulling over the years of my youth in the San Domenico convent. Tom despised the master for his sharp intellect in those gloomy days, spewing hateful accusations of him working dark magic of dealing with the wicked. Only his belonging to an influential family in the area had saved him from trial, but he was still forced to lead the order and take refuge in the isolated palace in the middle of the lake. Nevertheless, his closest disciples, with him, myself amongst them, were punished accordingly and sent off to different convents beyond the papal states. Spent much of the following day in the monastery's church, praying to the Virgin and the saints for the salvation of my master's soul. As sunset approached, I was joined in my cell by the lay brother who would ferry me to the island. I greeted by the abbot with warmth, and he prayed for God to grant me safe passage. We reached our destination. After a short journey on an humble boat, I bid the ferryman farewell and promptly set off along to a steep path towards the center of the island, eager to reach the palace gates as soon as possible. The palace squares two-story block featuring a small town in its north quadrant, and the south brick facade was already in the shadow at that twilight hour. The entrance topped by an arch was sealed shut with two heavy oaks. I put faith in the abbot's word that the gate would be open upon receive me and pushed upon the solid wood doors, although they didn't budge an inch. Peering through the slit between them, I was surprised to see a thick wooden plank serving as a crude deadbolt. I presumed that perhaps some servants still resided within them, so tugged at the rope bell, pulled the door. Nobody answered my call, despite my efforts. The interior remained silent and still. The palace seemed uninhabited. It was clear that I would have to find an other way in. Her having clicked away. The garden extends several yards of it bore raised of ancient delights of rude pebbles flagged and led to a first fountain and then a chapel. A magnificent pine cone topped the three-tiered mountain fountain, and from marble, clear water sparkling in the midday sun as it flowed in its way down. I tried to imagine the joy that such a sight must have brought. Its melodic whispers drifted through the air, accentuating the chatter of ladies enjoying the summer afternoon. Now its base was thick with dead leaves of an autumn past, permeated by murky water rife from disease. Observed the interior of the chapel through the iron bars. A fresco of the Virgin and Child lit by the flickering candlelight brought solace to my soul, troubled by the news of the master's death, as I trod through the unfamiliar and seemingly abandoned place. Suddenly, a swift movement caught my eye, and a dark spot reflected on the altar's pink marble. I spun around to realize that it was naught but an humble blackbird digging for worms in the garden's soil. Descended into a small cultivated garden. On the terrace section of the land at the far end towards the east were several wooden storage sheds. Further, a stable stood alongside a chicken coop. Inside these humble sheds were stored agricultural tools, firewood and animal feed. A shack alongside them, housed an abandoned rowboat in modest condition. The rotting wooden shack had once served as a basic stable holding more than 3 steeds. No trace of the animals remained. A servant must have returned them to the mainland following the master's death. The chicken coop was also bare, but inside it, the scent of grain still hung in the air. it became apparent that these dismal spaces held nothing of use of me. Slowly made my way through the forest, feet sinking in the carpet of autumn dry leaves amidst the whispering chores of the woodland wildlife. I recognized chirrups of timid squirrels and the deep caws of blackbirds hidden up on high in the chestnut branches. Familiar sounds evoked memories of my carefree childhood, of the hunting games played with my brother and cousins under the watchful eyes of our fathers. Having advanced several paces, I found the earth sloping rapidly towards the lake. Its tranquil surface soon appeared from behind the trunks, lit the glow of the sunset. All of a sudden, the coastline had grown to the steep continue, so I made a sharp turn east, following the shore. Eventually, I reached a vantage point where the foliage tint allowed me to peer upon a wider expanse of the distance. In a direction, I spied on how the island coast formed a small but definite indentation, a small gulf about halfway into the cove. There stood an entrance to a cave within the rocky walls, partially shielded by sprawling fern leaves. Reaching it could afford me passage to the palace underground caverns. However, I needed a boat. The rocky wall was far too steep and smooth to permit my descent. To plunge into the deep lake waters was also out of the question, for I not know how to swim. Okay, back to the shed. To the east, I continued eastwards, following the thin shadows and chestnut. The myriad chestnut shells embedded in the yellow leaves pricked my humble finger. Several strides further, I reached a narrow clearing. There was much of the underbrush fine drew to an end. I finally found myself surrounded by birch tree growing imperfect. A glint from one caught my eye, sunken in the spark, the blade of a mother's axe, likely forgotten by the palace servant. I knew it could prove useful, so my little effort, I prized it free. Okay, we obtained an item. Okay, back to the map. Need to get a stored shed. There is a boat. I realized that tricky as it was, the vessel was my only means to reach the cave. I heaved the boat with some difficulty back down the path I'd taken, setting it down in the calm lake waters. I was by no means an expert oarsman, but in my youth I had sailed short stretches of the rivers by the grand family castle. I took the oar and aimed the bow eastward, intending to cover the least distance possible following the shoreline. The lake's calm tranquility and the delicate touch of setting sun eased my troubled mind. If just for a moment I shifted my gaze westward, watching as the great glowing orb sunk behind the silhouettes of the darkened mountain. Then the shimmering of the sun upon the lake's all but still surface, a sight that filled me with gratitude. I fell a part of a magnificent harmony and began to comprehend the stark truth of the philosopher's words, how the celestial word and its utter perfection reflects the true grandeur of God, of His might. Great spears high above, revolving with the divine majesty. I came to understand how that same grandeur permeates our mortal world, in the waters of the lake and seas, in the fires that blaze within the earth's core, in the dark stone of the mountains. Moreover, it lives on in the saps of plants, in each breath of animals, and in the most perfect creation in which the entire cosmos is replicated. Man himself, I saw how all is one, as within so without, as above so below. My pondering drew me to a sharp halt within the appearance of the small gulf from before. I turned to the cave mount and the ferns had reached out across it. From there, a long tunnel carved into the rock face extended towards the center of the island. I sent off in my boat, rowing several strokes more as the darkness grew denser and the screeching of the bats increased. Only when the boat abruptly grazed the rocky wall did I realize I reached the end of the tunnel. By then the darkness so thick I had to stand feeling blindly forward as I pulled the boat ahead. Finding a narrow staircase to my left, I abandoned the boat to begin a cautious ascent of endeavoring not to slip upon the damp mossy steps. I moved slowly in the blanket of the utter darkness with my right hand left and bracing the wall and my left reaching out for an obstacle along the way. After a few steps I brushed against the wooden surface of what seemed like a rough door. I speculated that this may once have served the inhabitants as a secret route out from the island, a means to escape pirates' attacks. The thought gave me confidence that beyond this threshold there lay the underground palace chambers. This soon gave way to disappointment, however. When I tried to push the door, I found it blocked. Okay, we need to use an item. We found the X. Click and drag. I recalled the X I had found in the birch grove. Such a door didn't seem sturdy enough to withstand a well-aimed blow or two. So the axe handle gripped firmly in my hand and began to strike with all strength I could muster. With a few swings the stone planks had started to give away, and a few forceful kicks granted an opening through the door into the palace interior. Before proceeding, I turned to retrieve the axe, yet its blade was sunken in the door, and in my attempts to lock it, the handle snapped clean off. A faintly light dimly illuminated the place. It emanated from a few worn-out candles, leaned up against the base of a column positioned at the room's center. I found myself standing in a cellular walled by damp brick, its low vault supported by stout stone columns. Ascending a staircase that led to a small doorway, I advanced into a long rectangular room that had been converted into the palace kitchen. I then ventured down a passageway to the right, entering a square courtyard with a rows of columns. Several doors stood within its walls, and it was overshadowed by two additional stories, both also with a rows of columns. I raised my eyes to the sky. Twilight had arrived. That night, in unfamiliar surroundings, I was to uncover the arcane legacy left to me by my master. Nothing could have prepared me for what I will witness within those walls, things terrible and extraordinary in equal measure. 49 keys. So that was the introduction to the 49 keys. Thank you for watching. Wish you well. Like, comment, subscribe, and follow me. And see you in the next video.